I don't believe in the Christian God.
Okay.
So if I heard a voice in my head that I thought was God, I would see that as a warning sign that I have a problem. I don't know exactly what that problem would be. But on the other hand, if I was a Christian and if I did believe in God and he told me to kill my kid, I'd say off. And so the same thing.
Okay, so I think he's referencing the Abraham and Isaac story, but in doing so, he just exposed himself as not having any understanding whatsoever about what that story is actually about. So let's just go to Genesis 15, which is where the story actually starts, even though the particular sacrifice story doesn't happen until 22. But you do have to read Genesis in context to understand it. It starts here with God's covenant with Abram. Fear not, Abram, I am your shield. Your reward shall be very great. But Abram said, what will you give me? For I continue childless. You have given me no offspring. And then God said, look toward heaven and number the stars, if you're able to count them. So shall your offsprings be. And he believed the Lord, and he counted it to him as righteousness. Also, Abraham was not having thoughts that he thought were God's thoughts. That is not at all what happened here. The Lord came to him in a vision. Visions are not at all thoughts in your head. This is a supernatural experience where you know for a fact you didn't come up with this in your head. But even after that, Abram was still kind of confused. How am I to know that I shall possess these rewards? And verse 19 through 21 describes one of the coolest theophanies described in the Bible. If you don't know what theophany is, it's just a visible manifestation to humankind of God. So Abraham literally saw God in visions and in person later on in Genesis chapter 18. So this isn't some crazy thoughts that he was having that he thought was God. Also, moving on to Genesis 21, verse 12, God also promises to Abraham, through Isaac shall your offspring be named. So Abraham had visions and he literally saw Yahweh in the flesh. And then in chapter 22, God says to Abraham, take your son, your only son, Isaac, whom you love, and offer him there as a burnt offering. So let me just ask you, if you had a vision and saw God in the flesh, and you watched him call down fire and brimstone from heaven onto Sodom and Gomorrah that happened in Genesis 19, what would you do? Would you just say, okay, I mean, you're literally God, you just did all this stuff and you proved yourself to me? Or would you say, no thanks. That son that you gave me, I'm gonna value that son more than you. Guys, that would be the most ridiculous idea. This critique of the Abraham and Isaac story just doesn't make any sense. And even when Isaac asked Abraham when they were heading up to the mountain, he said, we have the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering? And Abraham literally says, God will provide for himself the lamb for the burnt offering, my son. So Abraham knew God made a promise and that God was not going to break that promise. And guess what? This is literally what happened. Right after the angel told Abraham to stop, Abraham looked up and saw a ram caught in the thicket by its horns. So Abraham called that place, the Lord will provide. And I don't know, I might be going out on a limb here, but I'm pretty sure this story is all for the sake of foreshadowing what Jesus would do for all of God's people at the cross. I don't have to feel bound by all these old covenant laws. I don't have to feel like I have to pray 5 times a day and fast like the Muslims do. I don't have to wear a funny hat on my head like the Jews. All I have to do is walk in righteousness by faith in the Son of God who died for me, okay?
If you have any kind of leftover thing that your religion is true or that God might be real, what kind of douche says that if you don't do the right thing, they're going to punish you forever?
Well, that's simple. I would actually argue that God would be evil if he didn't punish evil people. Let's go back to Genesis 3 real quick. After God warned Adam and Eve that if they ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, they will die. And after they sinned, God said this is very important to understand. Behold, the man has become like one of us in knowing good and evil. Now, lest he reach out his hand and also take from the tree of life and eat and live forever. And then God banned Adam and Eve from the garden so that they would not live forever in sin. God literally planned from the beginning to destroy sin. I would go as far as to say that you are the evil one if you don't want to worship a God who punishes evildoers. Psalm 58 says that the righteous are going to be the ones who are rejoicing when they see vengeance. Mankind will say, surely there is a reward for the righteous. Surely there is a God who judges on the earth. John chapter 5 verse 24 says, whoever hears my word and believes him who sent me has eternal life. He does not come into judgment, but has passed from death to life. So if you believe in Jesus, you have eternal life, present tense. And if eternal life is eternal, that means you cannot lose it. But all of the people who do not believe in Jesus, when he comes back for the second time at the end of the world, everyone is going to be raised from the dead. Those who have done good to the resurrection of life, they will receive new, spiritual, glorified, immortal bodies like Jesus's body. And those who have done evil to the resurrection of judgment, they're going to have basically the same body that they had before, and they will be thrown into hell, where their worm does not die and the fire is not quenched, and they will die in their sin. They do not get to live forever like the righteous humans get to live forever.